Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we celebrate March and Women's History Month, of course, the OPT Network needs not a month to celebrate women. We do it all year long. But this month, we want to celebrate those women who are actually changing the game of life and changing lives. And I'm talking about teachers on the front lines of caring for our children in the midst of COVID-19, but they've been doing it for years. Our guest this morning is the principal of Marksville High School, Ms. Liza Jacobs. Liza, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We salute you and we thank you for being the change that you want to see in educating our young people. This past year has been incredibly hard, but before we talk about educating and keeping a school intact during COVID-19, you are a native Marksvillian and you are now the principal at Marksville High School. Let's talk about that journey and that progression into being an educator.
Sure. I've always loved school. As far back as I can remember, I held my sister hostage, making her be my little pupil. Shout out to my little sis, who was an involuntary student.
So you were the teacher. You were always the teacher.
Absolutely, no question. Poor thing. But I've always loved to, I've always wanted to emulate my teachers that I saw. I feel like I'm unusually blessed in that area, that I don't have one teacher I can think back to. I might have 20 or 30. Wow. And just because of what I saw them doing and how I saw them changing lives right in front of my face and changing my life, I couldn't imagine doing anything else, even though I went about it a roundabout sort of way. I guess that speaks to how strongly I felt about it, that I ended up circling back and doubling back into being an educator. And I love the town that I grew up in, and I wanted to, when I got my credentials for teaching, I wanted to do it here in this parish. Mm-hmm. So it's been a long-term dream for me to be an educator, and I'm so happy that I'm able to do it in the town that gave so much to me.
Wow. But before you became an educator, you decided that you were going to serve your country.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was one of 5 in the household, one of 5 children, and we weren't necessarily in the best place to where we could, have us all just trot off to college immediately. My stepdad, who I love with all my heart, sustained some injuries on the job. So it was just financially difficult. And, my parents were like, listen, you need to go in the military. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go in the military, I'm going to go in the hardest of the 4 branches in my mind, physically, most difficult branch, because that's just how I am. I like a challenge. And so, I decided I was going to go in the Marine Corps. And that whole senior year of mine, all my teachers were like, are you sure you're going in the Marine Corps? I'm like, yep, I'm sure. And I'm so glad that I did. It brought a different perspective to my life that I carry with me to even this day. And it was what afforded me the opportunity to go back to school and get my degree in teaching.
Wow. So when your parents say to you, you need to go to the military, how do you process that?
I just looked at that as, it's going to, give me an opportunity to do things and to go places and to see people, that I would never get just maybe staying local. Everything I believe happens for a reason. And although in my mind initially I wanted to go straight to college, obviously God had a different plan for me. And, hindsight's 2020. When you look back on everything that you've gone through in life, you can see how God was orchestrating this the whole time. And so, from early on in the Marine Corps, I realized that this was what I needed to be doing. I needed to go and kind of spread my wings, if you will, and get my feet wet with different experiences and meeting different kinds of people. It's an experience that I'm eternally grateful for having been a part of. And it's a camaraderie that exist even to this very moment. Any other Marines that I see, we always have an instant connection. So I'm blessed that I was able to be in the Marines for those years that I was.
And so when you ultimately become a Marine, what's that moment like? Because obviously you're probably the first in your family, I'm thinking, to become a Marine.
Absolutely. I'm first in my family. Yes, the first in my family. It's a grueling 12-week process, of boot camp. And let me just tell you, when you finish with those 12 weeks in Parris Island, South Carolina, you pretty much feel like you can tackle anything in life. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, mentally and physically, and just gives you such a sense of accomplishment and makes you feel, fearless, sort of, that you can tackle anything, and that no matter what it looks like, you're going to get through on the other side. And so that was instilled in me from, that 12-week boot camp and throughout those 4 years that I was active.
So in your
and
family,
again, I'm super thankful for that.
Sure. So in your family, there are 5 children. So where are you in that hierarchy?
Correct. So I have 2 older stepbrothers, and then I'm the oldest of the 3 girls. So, I've always been, how can I put this? Even though I had older brothers, I still felt like I was the one in charge.
You were the teacher. You were the teacher. So was there there even more pressure to make it through the 12 weeks and to become a Marine?
Absolutely. I just felt like no matter what happened, I had to make it through. I had to make it through the first time and one time. I sustained a weird, I don't even know what to call it. I had a little situation where I must have touched something when we were in combat town, and all the skin on, almost a third of my hand just fell off. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I tried to hide it from my drill instructors because I knew they were going to make me go to sick bay. And I was like, I'm not going to miss one activity. You are not recycling me. I'm going to finish on time. And so I went quickly to the doctor and I showed right back up, and they were like, what are you doing here? I was like, my hand is wrapped and I'm ready to go. Because I just felt this enormous sense of, this enormous urge to make sure that I finished and I completed it and I didn't let anything get in my way. Because I had a stepsister who was coming right behind me who was going to join the Marines also. And I wanted everyone to know, hey, if I can make it through, anybody can make it through.
Wow. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk about that drive and how you go out and you accomplish the goals and the things that you set out to do in life. And then you circle back and you decide that you are going to live your life's dream to become an educator, and even bigger, to become the principal of the school in which you graduated from. Our guest this morning is Miss Liza Jacobs. She is the principal at Marksville High School. We'll have more of her story right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we celebrate women in the month of March, no better women to celebrate than those who are educating and on the front lines, really, our teachers, our principals, those people who are agents of change in our students. Our guest this morning is Miss Liza Jacobs. She's the principal at Marksville High School. You go on and you have a career in the Marines. And at what point do you decide that you want to come back to your love and the thing that you believe that you were called to do?
I ended up having my oldest 2 children while I was in the Marine Corps, and what had me focus on moving to the next stage in my life and leaving the Marines was that I saw motherhood as the top calling in my life. Like, I'm going to do all that I can to produce productive children and children who feel loved and nurtured and cared for. And had I stayed, one of the things I was going to have to do was to leave my 2 children behind for a year so that I could go to Okinawa, and that I just could not do. So that was the signal for me that I needed to move on into, back into civilian life, if you will. And so that's how I ended up removing myself or leaving the Marine Corps and finding my way back home and back into school so that I could be a teacher.
So you go back to school with all intentions of becoming a teacher. So
correct.
When you start that process, it's like moving literally from one career to the next. How do you get
Right.
yourself reset to do that?
It took a little time. It's so weird when you're in the Marines. You just really get sort of reprogrammed. Your vocabulary is not the same anymore, and you people are looking at you like, "What are you talking about?" So it takes a little bit of an adjustment period, but you get there. And But I knew that the things, the characteristics and the motivation and integrity and whatnot that I learned in the Marine Corps, I knew that it would serve me well no matter what I put my hand to,
Mhm.
whether that was motherhood or going back to school or whatever the case may be. I knew it would continue to serve me well.
And then so after you get educated, you become a teacher, and even more, you become an instructional coach. Do you immediately
Right.
fall in love with the idea that you had all these years of growing up, of teaching?
Oh yeah. I mean, when I was in Catholic school at Holy Ghost here in Marksville, in the seventh and eighth grade, I guess I knew then too. I had such a small little class that I was a part of that whenever a teacher was absent, that taught pre-K, first grade, the lower elementary grades, the sister who was the principal of the school would come and get me, and I would substitute. So that just furthered my love for teaching children. So it's been inside of me for quite some time.
Mhm.
And when I got to my first actual teaching job in Cottonport, I was there for 5 years. I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. I absolutely fell in love with the aha moments that students would get
Mm.
after the teacher, had instructed them or had planned a lesson in such a way to remove barriers and to build background for kids who needed it the most. It was absolutely intoxicating.
Oh, wow.
And when I got the opportunity to be an instructional coach, I saw that as a mission to touch not just the students in front of me, but all of the teachers that I had kind of in my care. I was able to, try to download some of the things that I knew worked well with my students into them. And that was a different level of an aha when I got to see adults who finally arrived and were able to impact children's lives. So all of that was very, very intoxicating to me, and just wanted more and more of that. And you wanted to
Mhm.
see more and more of that change as you begin to touch different adults' lives.
So you talk about those aha moments. I ask teachers because I was one of those kids who had that real those blinders on about math. And I had a rubber meet the road moment where I had to learn math in order to move to the next place, educational wise. And I saw the moment that my instructor knew, because he was a young teacher, that he could teach and the student could
Right.
learn. Was there a moment for you where you knew what you were teaching, they were learning, and hence yes, I'm a teacher?
So
Mhm.
absolutely, there was a moment. My first year of teaching, I struggled because I even tell my teachers now that I train, I said, my first year I was like, I'm a Marine. So if I can command Marines, surely I can command some sixth graders. Well, it didn't quite work out that way my first year. But I did a lot of research and a lot of studying. And what I did not do, and that is what I teach my teachers today, and what I taught my teachers when I was an instructional coach, what I never did was blame the children if the children weren't getting it.
Mm.
Never did that. I always looked at myself and I said, okay, if my class is not getting this, then what do I need to do better? What structure do I need to put in place? How much more organized do I need to become? And so I never blamed one kid in my class because, they weren't getting it. And look, I'll be honest, a lot of times I've heard older teachers and teachers that I came into this profession with, hey, you just give it to them. If they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't. I thought that was the most egregious thing to have ever hit my ears.
Mm.
As a teacher, it is my job to set the structure and the tone in my classroom and to break down the instructions so that they can get it. And I'm a math teacher. Students are just out of 100 kids, you might have two that are like, I absolutely love math. And the 98 other students are mortified by the thought of math. So that made me even more hungry to make sure that I created a classroom environment that was inviting, but that was very structured. And, we didn't play around. We got down to business, but I was so thrilled and excited when I got my little sea legs, if you will, my second year of teaching, when I started seeing my kids turn from, I can't stand math, I'm afraid of math, to, I can't wait to get to your class every day. I love this class. I had a student one time at the end of the year, he gave me this little plaque that he had made for me. And he said, I was afraid to come to your class, but now I'm afraid to leave your class.
Wow.
And I was like, you're going to be fine. You're going to do great. You're going to do wonderful things. And that was so true about him and so many others that I've taught. But again, that was another thing that was just absolutely intoxicating for me, where I could see my kids just beginning to love a subject that they were deathly afraid of, and just watch them grow and really turn into great little mathematicians. It was just something you wanted more and more of.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk about the idea of turning more students into the love of math instead of turning them out, turning them inward, and how women change the game in education, especially women who are principals. Our guest this morning is Miss Liza Jacobs. She's the principal at Marksville High School. We'll have more of this conversation on point right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we celebrate women who are doing amazing things, we certainly want to look at the stories and the journeys of those educators that are keeping our kids safe and teaching, not just during COVID-19, but have made a life and a legacy of building the next generation and encouraging them to be all that they can be. Our guest this morning is Miss Liza Jacobs. She's the principal at Marksville High School. And I was saying to you when we first started the conversation, as a little girl, now I'm older than you, but you were saying too, we don't remember seeing any women, especially any women of color, who were principals when we were younger growing up. And so I think that that's really, really a touchstone in where we are and how we've grown as women.
I completely agree. And like I said to you before we started, I literally never even thought about that question beforehand. And sometimes we get so wrapped up in just, doing our work and, doing what we need to do each and every day, that you don't take time to just stop and even think back in that way. Because I just until today had not thought about the fact that every single principal I had in the past was a male principal.
Mm-hmm. And so when you come to the place where you're going to come out of the classroom and you're now going to be an administrator, how do you then take what you've learned as a Marine, the structure and the mindset, to come in and create structure so that kids now have an opportunity, a real opportunity to learn?
This is something I tell people all the time when I speak with parents and whatnot. I say that children will never come up to an adult and say, would you please give me structure? They would never come out and ask for it. But every single child on the planet craves it. And it's that environment, that structured environment that they do the very best in. They need to know what their boundaries are. They need to know, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And oftentimes we see some chaotic situations arise just because those sorts of things are not clear. And we don't communicate what we expect with children clearly and upfront. And it's always a reactive sort of deal. But I believe in proactivity and planning and proper planning and getting the right people on the bus in a school system so that you can, work with the individuals who are going to be standing in front of children. To me, that is the most impactful thing, is making sure you have the right folks on the bus, people who genuinely care about kids.
Mm-hmm. And how did you go about creating a team? Because you're right. I've heard teachers, even in college, that said, you know what? Here is the information. It's up to you.
Right.
And
Right.
in secondary education, teachers have said that. How do you create a synergy with the teachers that you have chosen for your team to then go out and take your mission to teach the kids that are in your care?
When I first arrived as the principal of Marksville High School, I ended up, being back here with some of the teachers that I was here with as an instructional coach. And so I had this extraordinary opportunity to work with people that I knew who had a heart for a kid, who had hearts for kids. So I knew what I was dealing with on some level, and I pulled those folks in who shared that same vision that I had when I was here before. Pulled those folks in on a leadership team, and we got to work really quickly around, what are going to be our shared values and our core beliefs, and what do we want here as a mission statement. And we recreated all of that from scratch, and it was things that we truly believed, that we do what's right for kids. That was our main mantra. And we talked about how we wanted to create an environment that was safe and challenging, that focused on academic and extracurricular excellence. So the key to getting everyone on board was to select a good leadership team who really and truly embodied what we wrote down on that paper. Because every decision that we've made since has been tied directly to those core beliefs and to that mission and vision statement. Mm-hmm. And that's how, the kids know we're genuine. They know that we are serious and we're here for them. It's not just about Algebra 2. It's about the decisions you make today. How are those going to affect you as an adult? And that's how we operate here every day.
Mm-hmm. And what was that vision?
We wanted to create a learning-focused culture here at Marksville High School, one where students were respectful, where students were, here on time and valued their learning, because it's not just for what we do each and every day. We're just going through the motions to come to school. No, everything we do here at our school is to prepare our students for life. You have to be at school on time. Why is that? Because you also have to be at work on time when you're an adult. You have to be respectful of the dress code. Why is that? Because there's probably a dress code at the place you're going to go work at in the future. Just every single decision that we've made here, every rule and procedure is to teach them about life, because before they know it, they are adults. Mm-hmm. And, we have so many that come back and say later, Miss Liza, I'm so thankful for what you did, because, I remember you fussing at us, about being here at school on time. And now I have to be at work at 5:00 in the morning. And I remember that every time I have to get up. We get that a lot. A lot of kids just double back and say how thankful they are for the structure that we put in place.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that concerns me most, and you mentioned it earlier, is math and science. How do we churn out a culture that is not afraid of math and science, especially for our girls and children of color that are going to fall by the wayside if somebody like Liza Jacobs doesn't step in?
The deal is we've got to just find those people who are all about that math and that science. I would pull my kids when they came into my classroom every year and say, what was your favorite subject? And I would tell them on the first day of school, by the end of this year, math is going to be your favorite subject. And then I just didn't do lip service. I broke it down so that they could get those nuggets of knowledge, in small digestible pieces. And so that's what I teach my teachers here to do as well. We don't just throw it out there and hope they get it. We design it intentionally so that they can get it. We check along the way to, shore up any deficiencies that they're experiencing so that they can experience success. And once they experience success, it's in our human nature to want more success. So they're going to continue at it. And that has to be the deal in math and science. And you have to get people who are knowledgeable about the math and science. I couldn't teach it unless I knew it deeply. And in order to empower the next generation of students, male and especially female, we've got to get the right folks in those areas. And, just here at Marksville High, I have an awesome math and science team who are giddy about math and science. I have a teacher who considers herself to be Miss Frizzle, if you will. And she's just, everything in her room is all about science. And I have one in high school that way, two in middle school that way. And, the kids are just excited about being in those classrooms. And that's what it's about. We're supposed to be creating excitement. Kids don't get excited about things that aren't intentionally designed for their success.
And so in all of your years of education, 2020 happens and COVID-19 changes everything. When we come back, I want to talk about how you teach, how you inspire, how you move past any fear that you may have for yourself and your teachers to continue the education process. Stay on point, everybody. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. You know, there have been so many unsung heroes in the midst of COVID-19, and none more than our teachers, our educators, who have worked tirelessly to make sure that kids learned at home through computers, which was challenging, and then to make sure that kids were safe when they came back into the classrooms. Our guest this morning is Miss Liza Jacobs. She's the principal at Marksville High School. And before we went to a break, we talked about sort of the fear when COVID-19 was at its height and we didn't know what was going to happen, whether kids should be back in the classroom, what that would look like. Talk about how you and your team come together to say what should happen in this very uncertain space of learning.
Sure. When we first, looked toward reopening in August, we knew we were going to have a delayed start just because we had so many things to try to put into place. But the first step we had to do was I pulled in all the faculty and we had a very frank conversation about what is really important in this school year. And, academics, absolutely. I'm all about academics. But what is the most important thing for this school year? Student and staff safety. That's the most important thing. And, just calming some of their fears and letting them know, we're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. A couple of things may not quite be the same for this school year, but we're going to do all that we can, teach all that we can in the way that we know how, and then listen in a lot of ways that we didn't know how. We had to really quickly get on board with a lot of online learning pieces, online learning platforms. But my teachers were so resilient, and they just took to it like fish in water almost. And, just calming some of their fears and letting them know, look, we're going to put things in place for your safety. We're going to, harp on social distancing and proper washing of our hands on a regular basis. But then we're also going to make some concessions for when kids are quarantined, when students have to be quarantined. And we're just going to put what's the most important thing first. And that's the safety and the well-being, mental well-being even of our students and our staff, because so much happened while we were closed. So many family members, passed away. There was just a lot of trauma coming back, if you will. And so I wanted them to know we're all in this together. We're going to get through this. And, just wanted to take some of that fear away and some of that pressure away that they were beginning to feel. There was no way we could do every single thing we had previously done and take on all that COVID-19 required us to do. So we just had some frank conversations about what was the most important thing when we returned to school.
So when you return to school, not only are you dealing with the kids' trauma, but the adults around you that felt traumatized by seeing people that they had loved die from the virus and the uncertainty. Right. How do you kind of deal with that?
We try to always have a family environment here. I'm very much about teamwork, and where one is struggling, the rest we step in and we help. And so we really called in that spirit of teamwork here this year, whether it was a student that was struggling or, a staff member who we do consider family, but a staff member who was struggling. We just all pitched in, and I've never seen it to where I'd email the teachers, look, we're struggling in this area. We have these people who are quarantined, and, they just were like, whatever I can do, I'll be happy to help you. Just tell me where to go and what time to be there. And it was, just a wonderful testament to the spirit of collegiality that we had built here at this school, that we could just step in and help wherever help was needed.
Was there apprehension on your part as the leader of the school that everybody would be safe and how that would work?
I did a lot of researching while we were actually closed down, and when we were allowed to have like 1 to 10 people at school and whatnot without the children, just did a ton of research on, different little scenarios and what this virus looked like, when we had a pandemic in the early 1900s. I mean, I researched all the way back, and I felt very confident that when we did start school back, that we had put in enough procedures and policies and whatnot to keep them safe and the students safe.
Mm-hmm. And so going forward, being at your alma mater, being the leader of your school, and seeing Marksville High School from a very young girl and fast forwarding, what do you hope will be your stamp on the next generation?
I just hope and pray that, I certainly leave this school better than I found it. And my hope is that, in the 90s, we have so many students from Marksville High and the various high schools around the parish that went on to do really awesome things. And I want my kids here to know that no matter we're from a small town in Marksville, we've produced some of the best in every arena of life. And I want that to be said again. Our students go off to the military, they go on to school, and they're doing really, really awesome things. And I just want the students who are currently still enrolled at our school to know that the sky's the limit for them too. And I want to make sure that we give them every opportunity while they're here to, chart a path to greatness. And that no matter how big or small our town is, that they are able to do anything that anyone else is able to do. And so that's the legacy that I want to leave, is that I want my kids to know that they can do any and everything that any and everyone else can do.
That's powerful, especially in this culture where family structures are changing. Is it a harder sell to teach kids on possibility and their possibility when, kids, the family dynamic doesn't necessarily look like it did even in the early 80s and 90s? It's changed a lot.
Sure, it has changed, but I will say that I do find it interesting that you brought that up, because I feel like my kids are able to relate to me a lot. My upbringing was certainly not perfect. And, I have a stepfather. I've had some issues with my biological father in the past. And, again, we talked earlier about how hindsight is 20/20, and you can look back and see how the Lord has worked in your life. And I honestly and truthfully believe that everything that God has brought me through is so that I can speak to a child here at this school and say, if I overcame this, you can overcome it too. I didn't have a 2-parent home all of my life, and my original parents weren't together all of my life. And, I've come through a lot of hardships, but I believe that if I'm able to do any of those things and overcome any of those things, then there's no reason why any male or female student at my school cannot do the same.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you really, really talk about is perseverance. And I think that is key to anything that we do on any level, being able to stand in there and never say quit. Liza, we just want to thank you for taking the time, but most of all, we celebrate you as a leader in our state, as a leader in the community in which you serve. And we just can't thank you enough for being an agent of change and sculpting those lives that will go out and do great things in our state, in our world, and in our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you for recognizing me in that way. And the only thing I hope to gain by this is that some young lady or young man will be inspired by anything that I've said here today.
Absolutely. I bet they will. Thank you so much. Our guest this morning, Ms. Liza Jacobs. She is the principal at Marksville High School. Stay on point. We're back after this.